Hello, everybody. I'll be your therapist today, Mr. Doc. Now, this is going to be a two-part series where first I'm going to talk about my experiences with therapy, and then we'll talk about the different forms of therapy. So you could seek out therapy because you need it. All right. Okay. Now, let me introduce myself. As I said, I'm Mr. Doc, and I have years of experience of going through therapy and learning about therapy. So I will be the perfect therapist just for you. Okay, so what is therapy? Well, therapy is a form of getting help through a therapist, right? Their whole process is to get you psychologically stable so you can be a functioning member of society, because we all live in a society, as the Joker once said, and we all love the Joker because he's so very mentally stable. All right, well, my experience, right? As I said, I've been going through therapy ever since I was a child because I was a troubled kid, you see. I have this condition called dyspraxia, also known as developmental coordination disorder, where basically my development is slow and I gotta work harder than the normal person, and I have very strong emotions. So, wow, that meant that I had to go to therapy at a young age because my parents didn't know what to deal with my crazy ass shit. So, they diagnosed me early on with a psychologist, and I've been going through all sorts of therapy, right? Therapists are trying to help me work through my emotions, right? So first, I went through talk therapy, right? And she wasn't that great, but at least I now know how to say rabbit, because that was a real issue that she wanted to address, even though I was only copying what was his name, Elmer Simpson, the guy that's hunting wabbits, right? She thought that I was pronouncing R's as W's. So thank you, therapist. I I owe my perfect vernacular speech to you. So there's really not much said about childhood therapy besides them diagnosing me with dyspraxia and, speech therapy. But it was only in high school that I started to really go to therapy. That's when, you know, I started to better myself, right? Now, in high school, right, I wanted to fix myself. So I would, I guess I'll explain most of it during my model, but I did most of my research. I got into meditation, I got into healthy eating, I got into cold showers, exercise. The only thing I was lacking is socialization, which I only developed during adulthood. That's when I became more socialized. But as a teenager, I went through family therapy. So I went to therapy with my eldest sister. She didn't really want to go to therapy, but I love therapy because I love learning about the brain. You see, that's why I'm a good therapist. Because her and we had a troubled childhood together, right? I despised her because she highlighted all the things I didn't like about myself. So it was like looking at a mirror image, but all you see is the worst qualities in that person that you see in yourself. So we went to a couple therapy sessions. Nothing really came of it. And later I went to therapy with my parents because they thought I had an eating disorder, right? I was into intermittent fasting, right? And I remember astounding the therapist with my intelligence of my higher level knowledge of ways that we should properly eat food, right? Which I will get into later, right? Now, so nothing really came of that. I was just being a smartass. And then later on in grade 10, I did some more therapy, right? She also thought I was pretty smart, and nothing really came of it besides just boosting my ego, talking through my sociopathic tendencies, right? I want to uh, not so much be a sociopath. I wanted to be a psychopath because I didn't want to feel anything, because these hyper arousal emotions, they were just too out there, right? I just wanted to not feel anything and just be cold, calculated, sort of like my father, but more chill. He's more chill than what I wanted to be. I wanted to just be a full blown psychopath, emotionless. Um, so that sort of was one of the reasons why I didn't really have too much friends in high school, right? And the therapist, the only thing I remember her telling me is that she was relating how when she was in high school, she had to hide her intelligence from her peers and friends because they wouldn't like it, right? They would get intimidated, so she had to act dumb. And I was just dumb, and I had a huge ego, and I played off a intelligent persona, right? So there's that. And now the real meat and potatoes of this conversation is adulthood. That's when we start to really get deep into therapy, because you see, in the end of no midway through my first semester of grade 12, I guess these two blend together. I had a major mental breakdown that caused me into severe depression that lasted a good 4+ years of my life. So I had lots of therapy when it came to that. Yeah. So during my downfall, right? Maybe I'll get into why I had a downfall in a separate video, but let's just say I just had a downfall. And during it, I was speaking to a school counselor. And he was a pretty chill dude, and he's like, in a couple years we'll have a beer together and we'll talk about existentialism, which you don't really need to know by now. It's a far off philosophical concept that I just dwelt way too much on, because I had an existential crisis that needed to be sorted, right? Questioning the meaning of my life was one of the things that was really bugging me and really got me into a downward spiral. Is my life is meaningless. And this therapist, I gotta commend him, because he was doing the best job he can to talk it through with me and give me some insights. And like, shout out to you, dude. I'd love to have that beer someday. So I was able to graduate, and I did a bit of therapy here and there. Some therapists I did not really want to see, because I was very opposed to antidepressants. I didn't want to have drugs that modified my brain chemistry, and I was morally opposed to it. Uh, so I had to drop some therapists that said your only resort is antidepressants. And you know what? They were right, because in the end, after years of being like, no, no, I'm not going to do it, I gave up. I was at the end of my road, so the last resort was antidepressants, and we'll talk about that later. But for now, high school, transitioning into adulthood, right? A major life event. People don't talk about this enough. The major life event from teenage to adulthood, it's a tough transition, because we've spent our whole years in a high school and elementary school, and some people have even middle school, which I'm sorry for you. So transitioning into adulthood is like, what's my life's purpose now that I'm a free agent adult, that I can do whatever I want? Well, you sit at home and watch YouTube to numb the pain and suffering you have, and trying to forget everything. That's what I did to cope, right? I just sat in bed 24/7 for a year and a half, just trying to forget everything that I learned, because it was just too fucking dark, man. And if I even share a sliver of it with you, then you're probably even gonna go in a downward depressing spiral, just like me. So I'm your therapist, and I'm being responsible, and I won't do that to you. Okay. Now, so I'm an adult now. I graduated, and I'm seeking therapy, right? My parents are doing the best they can, and They you found this one therapist. Let's call her Madonna, right? Madonna. She was a good-looking therapist, right? Slick black hair, white and slim, and white is the most important quality because I'm a racist. Oh my god, that's going to be taken out of context, isn't it? I'm not actually a racist. I have colored friends, therefore, I'm not a racist. Okay? Okay. Um, anyways, besides the point. So I was seeking this therapist, and my therapist from that point onwards, they've hounded the point home of cognitive behavioral therapy. That's the therapy that British Columbians in Canada like to hound home is cognitive behavioral therapy, which we will get to in the second part of this short video series, right? So cognitive behavioral therapy, in short, is basically influencing your mind, your cognition, right? Your mental faculties to influence your behavior. So the stuff you do on a daily basis to then produce happiness or at least stabilizing yourself so you can get on with your life and be a functioning member of society. Because in the end, that's what therapists are trying to do, is make you a functioning member of society and cure these neuroses that inflict all of us. I call it the we live in like the uh, first world or third world. We live in a industrialized modern society, and it's the modern industrialized plague that inflicts us all, uh, is these mental neuroses. So, which I will get into later. But first off, so Madonna was handing home uh, cognitive behavioral therapy, and I'd see her at least once a week. And the best part of it was giving her a big hug at the end of it. The only human connection I got for a couple of years, besides my parents. But I didn't really hug them as much as I hugged her. Yeah, good times. So yeah, she was nice, and I was suicidal at the time, and she was like really hoping that I didn't bite the bullet, which I attempted a couple times, but man, I am just too scared of death to give up on life. You know, infinite time, like being dead for infinite amount of time, that sucks, man. I don't want to do that. So don't kill yourself, right? Don't watch 13 Reasons Why and get the wrong idea, right? Just don't, right? Be like me. Yeah, maybe one day, if you're going through something, maybe one day you'll just be like me, because I was in the worst of worst, besides going into drugs, which I cannot help you there, because those drug addiction is just too fucking tough. So adulthood, I saw Madonna for a bit, and then I saw this other therapist later after I stopped seeing her. Let's call her Cassandra, right? Cassandra, she did her best to, she tried to create this small group of people that are depressed, it's probably not the best idea, as my mom pointed out, but she did her best to talk with me and let me just complain about all my sorrows, all my pain, all my suffering. But in the end, I too stopped seeing her, but just because I just got exhausted talking about my problems. And I got exhausted working on myself. If that's your whole thing that you got going on, is just talking about your problems and working on your problems, yeah, you're just gonna not want to show up to therapy anymore. You're just gonna get exhausted and just want to lay on the couch and yeah, so she did her best, and I can only see her until like I became a official adult, um, which I think is like age 19, right? So I guess still bordering between adult and teenage years. So in the end, after months of not seeing her, because I graduated into adulthood, she sent my mom an email recommending this program called it was about maintaining trails in the town that I used to live in, and so I applied to it, and they said that they loved my application, but there was better applicants. But they recommended another program called Food Share, right? Giving food to other people, right? They had this workshop, and the whole point of them is to train you up, right? To, you know, again, make you a functioning member of society, contributing things. And so I went to this workshop, and this was like the first time I really got to see people besides the failed workshop that I did and then uh, put behind me. Uh, yeah, let's not talk about that period. Let's talk about this one now. That yeah, it really helped me. It got me to socialize, get out, and get my resume all cleaned up to work. And they ended up they ended me up on a farm. Working part time on a farm to produce food for the locals, and this whole farm is was created by Craig Evans, who recently passed away, and I give my whole heart, thoughts, and prayers to him. May his soul rest. I miss you, and I think about you. But Craig Evans, really chill dude. Some people would say otherwise, and I don't blame them. But he wanted to create this community of people that were down on their luck, homeless, mentally unwell through just mental neuroses or autism, Asperger's, just anybody that isn't really acclimated to working. So the whole point of it is to give you a decently paying wage and get you being a functioning member of society. Again, that's what we need to do, is make people functioning members of society to fuel the economic machine. That's our whole purpose. um, yeah, so it was a good time. It was a very good time, being out in nature, being digging in dirt, uh, being with people, listening to some tunes. It was a really good time, and I really think back on it fondly, because that was really something I wanted to do. Is just my my work. I want to be active. I want to be in nature. I want to be around people, and there were hard times, uh, but I think farm therapy. I think it would really work for a lot of people, right? Like it can be stressful because there are fine details that if you mess up, you're messing up the whole procedure from, growing the plants to planting them to harvesting them. But in a supportive environment like that, just giving people extra push, it was good. So that's what I did until I could no longer work it because my body just broke down. And that's really the extent of where it landed. That it was good. It boosted my morale, my energy until it didn't. Uh, and then from there, I just went to school, and then I went to work. And now that my body has broken down again, I'm seeking physiotherapy, which, is different from all the therapies that we've talked about, besides, the farm therapy, which is physical, physical. So my body broke down because I forced myself to go off of antidepressants on my own accord. Stupid idea. You know, I've heard the warnings before, but I didn't listen. So don't you dare go off of your antidepressants without informing your doctors and your other peers, right? That was like I have it documented on this channel about how bad it was. So don't do it, or else you're gonna be fucked. You're gonna be fucked, right? I'm gonna come to your house and beat you up. So don't do it. I'm not actually gonna do it. That's a joke. Um, but I'm your therapist, so I strongly advise not to go off of your antidepressants. And now I've been also seeking normal therapy, and you know my IQ is too high for basic therapy, so she assigned me homework to research into ACT therapy, so acceptance and commitment therapy, and which we will get into next episode. Yeah, but that's really the extent of my therapy for this period, and I'm sure I'll do more therapy. There's some therapy I'm dreaming of doing, like psychedelic assisted therapy, that if I could somehow uh, go through that with a trained professional, that would be amazing. Like I would make that into a huge YouTube video, because the success rates are high and impressive and long lasting, and it's the hands-on uh, therapy that I've found talk therapy not the most uh, valuable, which is a good transition into my model of therapy, right? Active therapy versus talk therapy, right? Talk therapy can only go so far, right? Talk therapy, it's all about them giving you advice. Well, first you talk about your problems and you cry your heart out, right? And then they give you homework, which you have to put into your life, right? The whole process is you dumping your trauma onto this person, and then them putting a load on your back and say, all right, now carry this, right? Do this homework, right? Which is the toughest part, is doing the homework, right? Crying your heart out, complaining about your problems, uh, that's all good and well, but the whole need of it is that you do the stuff at your home at your own time, right? And I don't find that like fully works, right? You can look up studies and you'll see that, yeah, there's some success, but it's shaky, right? It tends not to be long lasting, even though people going to therapy when they're in need is good in general, and I recommend it. Uh, but it can be better, right? And that's my whole model of active therapy, of getting people to go into these workshops like what I did, right? But more designed around uh, human betterment. So, for example, learning about how to connect with people, right? Learning how to reach out to people and feel bonded towards people, because that's something I've not experienced until recent history, is actual human connection and bonding, right? The first time I truly felt it was at a Halloween party uh, in grade 12. And, the withdrawal from that was like the emotions were great, and the withdrawals were horrible because I didn't have that human connection back at home. Uh, so just learning to connect with people through these workshops, learning just about like the human brain and mind and how it works, and uh, the tools to work with it. I think that's huge, because that's what I've learned, is I've learned how my mind works, and I'm able to put things in place. But do that with people, right? So it can be better solidified, and you can bounce off ideas. and just doing these workshops to show people a better way of living your life, right? Cooking the right food, uh, down here, being in groups, right? Just get people out, get people doing stuff. And I've done a mixture of it, but I have not actually done a workshop dedicated just for this. And that leads me to my last point is food. I'm a food guy through and through, right? I can talk about food all like every day, all the day. Like my friends in high school, they can tell you that I tried to get them into different diets, and I tried to preach them about different ways of eating. Right? If you eat right, you'll feel right because what you eat. So just look at the next time you eat food, just look at it and just acknowledge that this food is going to become a part of you, that you're absorbing the essence, the spirit of what makes that up into you, and it's going to manifest through you. So if you're eating empty calories, you're going to feel empty, right? If you're eating an animal that was stressed out before it died, you're going to manifest that stress in you, right? This is not hookah hookah, this is actual science. So just trust this random guy that's your therapist, your trained therapist with a definitely not fake certificate to tell you that you are what you eat. As your grandma always said, you are what you eat. So you need to eat food. Like, don't overstress yourself, right? The most simple rule is to eat foods that are less modified. That's the simplest. So, like, don't eat just like raw pork, like what I did. Um, just eat less modified but diverse foods that and add spices to your food, right? Most people they respond more positively towards plant-based foods, right? Meat is important, but adding a lot of fiber to help the flow of your digestion and to increase your diverse microbiome. So I know you didn't think we're going to go into this when we're talking about therapy. Well, there's these tiny microbes on you and all around you, and not all of them are bad. Not all of them are COVID, right? A lot of them are really good. I hear my mom in the other room. And so you have a whole bunch of microbes in your gut, right? They want to they want to eat good food. They want to help you, right? Have you heard of the hormone serotonin, the mood stabilizer, the you know dopamine and serotonin, the two hormones? Well, 80% of this of your serotonin is produced in your gut, right? So this happy chemical that makes you feel connection and love and just have a clear mind is produced in your gut. So you want to grow those microbes that can produce this hormone for you, right? If you're not eating much fiber and you're eating more meat than necessary, then you're not going to produce as much of those happy hormones in you, right? There's this nerve called the vagus nerve that runs from your gut up your brainstem to your brain, and your brain actually communicates back and forth with these microbes. So you really want to make these microbes your best friend and not be afraid of them. Don't fill them up with diabiotics, right? Bionicles. Just really eat good food, right? Just eat a diverse food, less modified, mostly plants, as Michael Pollan famously said. I think that was his book. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's it. We've covered a lot. This video is running way too long. It's already minutes. Holy, I'm so sorry for you if you sat through all of this, but I'm also very grateful. I've been receiving lots of support on these videos, and my whole thing is I stay relevant. I talk about important topics like this. So if you listen through all of this, I commend you. So thank you. And I think that's it for all, and I'm gonna stop wasting your time, and you'll see me in the next video, which will be a part 2, where I talk about the different therapies that you could possibly do and talk to your therapist about. But that's it for now. Stay frosty, and goodbye.